Was Nancy Guthrie in this car?
Is Nancy Guthrie inside this speeding car? A Ring camera not far from her home captured this video the night of her kidnapping. The video comes as Savannah Guthrie posts a new plea on social media, vowing that her $1 million reward will be paid in cash.
He is all angry, kind of passive-aggressive about what you are doing, which is following every lead.
Oh, it would be completely inappropriate for me to spend no time on the brother-in-law. He was the last person to see Nancy Guthrie. I mean, you know, that we know of. Obviously, an abductor came into the house later that night.
Video obtained by Fox Digital shows a dozen cars triggering the camera's motion detectors as they sped by in the hours after her abduction. But
obviously, we have to look at the brother-in-law. I'm sorry. And by the way, Paul, if you, God forbid, had a family member go missing, or I, God forbid, had this happen to us, I think both of us would say, speculate all you want about me, about my family, as long as you continue paying attention to the case and keeping it in the headlines.
But this one is getting intense attention. It was taken at 2:36 a.m. That's 48 minutes after the kidnapped suspect was caught on camera at Nancy's front door. It's also 8 minutes after her pacemaker disconnected from her cell phone, which is the moment she is thought to have been taken from her house. The Ring camera is located here, 2.5 miles from Nancy's home. The car is thought to be a Kia Soul based on its slanting roof. The Pima County Sheriff's Office says it is actively reviewing the new lead.
I got nightmares in my head, I fear. Thoughts build up until I can't feel. My mind fills up into a creature, and it haunts me somewhere much deeper. I got nightmares in my head, I fear.
Well, here we are 28 days later, and hasn't it been a roller coaster ride of false starts, dead ends, ups and downs, leads that turn out to be leads, suspects that turn out to be not suspects. And whatever happened to the brother-in-law that was implicated, no one is talking about him now. Is he just not flavor of the month anymore? On day 3 of this case, when it was already becoming obvious that there was no legitimate ransom demand in the offing, that's also something that's moved on. No one is taking those ransom demands seriously anymore, and as a result, there have been no more ransom demands. And that's what we can see now, is no financial motive to this crime. I posited the grievance motive for the first time on day 3 of this case. When I did, no one really took that seriously. I was actually the first to do so, and many people scoffed at the idea. It took roughly 2 weeks, about 14 days, halfway to where we are now, for that theory to start to gain any real traction. Then just a week ago, a former FBI agent made headlines offering the grievance theory as a, quote, new theory. Recently, even the sheriff has been talking about it as a likely motive. In this analysis, I don't really want to explain how one can thin slice so accurately so early on. You know, I did the same thing in the Kohberger case when everyone was talking about serial killers. Also in the Gus Lamont case when people were talking about, yes, he could have wandered off. So I don't want to really go into how you thin slice from the get-go. And so instead of revealing the thought process behind thin slicing, I want to talk about grievance. Today, Saturday, February 28th, is probably a good day to talk about grievance. After all, one country has just decided to go to war with another country. What is that all about? It's about something that they apparently feel very strongly about. You know, there's something they apparently felt very strongly opposed to. Do you know what that is? Have you known what that is for a long time? Or is this something of a surprise to you? Now, it's a slippery concept because in the same way that you don't care about my grievance unless it directly or personally affects you, I don't really care about yours. And so when we talk about a grievance against Nancy or even Nancy's grievance against someone else, it may seem silly until something serious happens. It is simply silly because we don't have a stake in it. For example, if you told me someone had cut down a tree in your yard, I might not feel terribly invested in your story. By the way, I probably would, but anyway. But if it was my tree in my yard, you bet I would be pretty invested. But the point is this.
Unfortunately, no one can be told what the Matrix is. You have to see it for yourself.
And in the same way that we can't really tell someone about a grievance, we have to show it. You can only know what this is by experiencing it. And that's what we're going to do in this episode. Now, before we do that, I do want to stress that I'm not really here to take a side in this particular dispute. To be honest, although I'm vaguely aware of both of these media personalities, I don't really ever watch them. And I only know about this because they both happen to have commented on the Guthrie case, and that made headlines. But this has emerged as a fairly major conflagration on the sidelines of the Guthrie case, and there's a very important takeout from it. It's not the actual dispute that's important, it's the takeout from the dispute. It's quite important to make that clear. And so here's the story from a relatively neutral source. In late February 2026, Chris Cuomo and Megyn Kelly were engaged in an escalating public feud, with Cuomo criticizing Kelly for her reporting on the Nancy Guthrie disappearance, and Kelly firing back with personal insults. Cuomo's criticism was that Kelly and other reporters, and quite a few people on social media as well, were implying that Savannah Guthrie's brother-in-law was a suspect in the disappearance. He called this coverage shameful, clickbait, and ugly, suggesting it was payback for her departure from NBC. Now remember those words, because we're going to come back to it. Suggesting that this was payback for Kelly's departure from NBC. Now Kelly's response was that she rejected the criticism. She said that in a serious investigation, no one should be ruled out, regardless of feelings. And then she used a lot of personal slurs. And this is really the comment that kicked off the whole sideshow meltdown.
I have been reporting to you consistently. Any notion the family is involved ain't coming from the investigators, okay? And they have shown no proof that would point us in that direction. And yet it's all over social media. It's a hoax, it's a cover-up, it's an inside job, it's false flag. Why?
That video got barely over 4,000 views, whereas Megyn Kelly's video implicating the brother-in-law, when I last looked, had something like 1 million views. And this was Megyn's response to that particular criticism.
I'll show you what the douchebag Chris Cuomo is saying. In fact, let's just play it now. It's SOT 52. He's very upset that Ashley Banfield and yours truly have raised questions about the brother-in-law, Ashley's reporting. And based on Ashley's reporting, we've asked questions on this program. And here's Fredo Cuomo on his little-known show on News Nation, which has less viewers than I have fingers.
Now, look, I've never heard law enforcement make this kind of a statement during an investigation, and I'm not calling for the family to be removed from suspicion. The job is the job. Now, the Pima County Sheriff has come out and said something I've never heard before. The Guthrie family, cleared as suspects. They've been nothing but cooperative. Saying, I'm begging you, the media, to honor your profession and report with some sense of compassion and professionalism. Right? But the job is also, you don't speculate just because you don't care that you're destroying this family, just because it may get you some clicks. But I want to correct something the sheriff said. It's not the media. No one who pays attention to the law or any standard of decency is doing this. What these digital people are doing. It's the digital media. It's those denizens. It's people who get paid for clicks and rage bait. All right.
And Megyn Kelly then goes on to say that he's just jealous and so on and so on. Now, it's easy to get caught up in it now, especially if you do take sides. And to be honest, I do feel one has a stronger point than the other. I mean, at the end of the day, what did the investigators say in terms of the suspects? I think the stronger point to make was that it was actually clear from very early on that this was a stranger, even if you just looked at that footage. But there were other reasons as well. But the better point to make in terms of dealing with the whole Matrix issue, the whole psychological woods in terms of this particular area, is that Cuomo made a comment about Kelly that actually told me something about a third person, Savannah, that I didn't know. And also something about Kelly that I didn't know. Payback for her departure from NBC. What was that all about? And so since the original story is about Nancy Guthrie and Savannah is sort of indirect to Nancy's story, that was the part I was interested in. I was interested in this tangent of the argument between Kelly and Cuomo. And so I looked into it. And again, here's the narrative from a relatively neutral source. When Megyn Kelly moved from Fox News to NBC in early 2017, there were widespread rumors and reports that she was being positioned to take over for the Today Show anchor Savannah Guthrie. However, these reports were denied by NBC executives at the time. But these are the key details regarding that 2017 rumor. There were reports that the NBC chairman was grooming Kelly to take the lead from Savannah Guthrie. There was talk about signing a massive deal that was longer than Kelly's from Guthrie's side, that secured her position, that was referred to as the reality. Then there was Kelly's role. Instead of replacing Guthrie, Kelly was hired to host a new daytime hour, the Megyn Kelly Today Show. And then the outcome is that Megyn Kelly actually struggled with ratings and controversies, which ultimately led to the cancellation barely a year later in October 2018. Now, did you know that at one point Megyn Kelly was poised to take Savannah's job at the Today Show? I didn't. And 9 years ago, those very words were making the headlines. Could Megyn Kelly replace Savannah Guthrie on the Today Show? And it's so crazy. 9 years later, you have Megyn Kelly reporting on Savannah Guthrie and sort of saying things like, could her brother-in-law be involved in a crime? You know, could this and that be going on? And she's really been breathlessly reporting on the Guthrie case. I mean, even as a YouTuber who's quite consistent, Megyn Kelly has really jumped on this case with a gusto, like posting often 3-4 videos hourly on a daily basis. And she's done very well doing that. Here's another headline. Savannah Guthrie returns to the Today Show as rumors swirl about Megyn Kelly replacing her. And so if you think about it, this idea that Megyn Kelly would replace Savannah Guthrie, and then ultimately Megyn Kelly doesn't replace Savannah Guthrie and Megyn Kelly actually leaves that show. And you can kind of imagine that there must be a feeling of, well, what would you say? What sort of feeling would you say might be the residual feeling after this showdown? And again, this is from January 9 years ago. It's the same time of the year that Nancy was abducted. And of course, right now, Savannah is preparing to return to that same show, that same slot that she was under threat of losing. That is how secure it remains to this day. And did you know this? In January of this year, Savannah had actually been off the air for some time. She was off the air for the first 2 weeks of the year, of the beginning of the year, and the last week or so at the end of December of the previous year. And that was because she'd had an operation on her vocal cords. That happened in late December, and it involved a brief but scheduled departure from her show, and because that required 8 days of strict vocal rest. And she was then supposed to return to the air in late January 2026. So you have Savannah going off air, in a way involuntarily, and then when she wants to return, and that actually happened on the 23rd of January, here's the headline, right? 23rd of January, and then a week later, Nancy Guthrie is abducted, and as a result, Savannah's basically taken off air again. And you may know that Savannah was due to cover the Winter Olympics. She was about to leave to cover that. And then she was taken off air from that because of what happened to her mother. And so something I hadn't considered was that Megyn Kelly might have a grievance against Savannah. And you can see when Megyn Kelly has a grievance, for example, against Cuomo, it can be quite scathing. It can be quite painful. It's kind of quite painful to watch. Grievance might be the wrong word. You know, perhaps it's a competitive rivalry. Perhaps it's a chip on her shoulder. I don't know. I'm speculating. And I don't know either of these personalities either. I'm not in America. I don't watch their shows. But it seems to me Megyn tried to get into Savannah's network and for reasons unknown wasn't able to do so. And far from replacing Savannah, Megyn is where she is now on YouTube. And she's doing very well. I remember a very short period, where my channel was bigger than hers. And look where she is now. But I wonder if given the chance, would she rather be a YouTuber or an anchor for the Today Show? And I wonder if someone was watching, perhaps angrily or jealously, Savannah's departure, because of her vocal cords, then a return to the Today Show, and they were sort of hoping that she wouldn't return, but then she did return, and then did they perhaps take some sort of action? Now, if Megyn's watching, and I highly doubt she is, maybe she could answer that. Would she rather be a YouTuber or an anchor for the Today Show? It's an interesting question to me because I was once a mainstream reporter and a photographer, freelance, like Bryan Enton, I guess, but reporting for mainstream publications. I'd much rather be doing what I'm doing now, but I was never high profile on any of those platforms, certainly not as high profile as Bryan Enton, but I digress. Coming back to the politics of Grievance, what if there's a fan out there, a fan of Megyn's possibly, with the same political beliefs, on the same side, whatever that side is, someone who's watched her career and saw Savannah as getting in Megyn's way, and this person wanted to help Megyn. I'm talking about someone who just unilaterally felt that they wanted to do this because of their own feelings, because of their own grievances. Just as Savannah was about to come back, wouldn't this be a way of keeping her off the air? And for a while, rumors swirled that Savannah might not return. And of course, she is set to return exactly 1 month later. Now, to be fair, I don't really believe there's much merit to this unhinged fan theory. I'm simply showing you that there can be a tremendously complicated matrix of grievance between people that we know absolutely nothing about. And another good case that I think involves grievance is the JonBenet Ramsey case. Who had a grievance against little JonBenet that we just don't know about and we don't really appreciate, and that hasn't really been spoken about? Now, in terms of the Guthrie case, it could well be the bozo in the Nest footage that had a direct grievance against Nancy and nobody else, right? Not against Savannah, nothing to do with Megyn Kelly. This person had a direct grievance against Nancy. It could be political, and I suspect that it might be, but it could even be personal. Perhaps she said something, perhaps she underpaid a service worker or something, and that's something like that. But I suspect that it might be political. It could also be a botched burglary that became a personal grievance during the commission of the crime because they argued about the security footage and that couldn't be settled. But there definitely is a possibility that someone wanted to score a point, a political point, against Savannah through her mother. Since Savannah had her mother on television in a restaurant in Tucson just a few months before this disappeared, I wouldn't rule this out. And in terms of what has changed in the 50 years since Nancy has lived in Tucson, I'm not sure if America has ever been as divided politically as it is now. You guys in America would know that better than me. How does it feel to you compared to how it's felt 10 years ago, 20 years ago, 30 years ago? I'm not sure, as an outsider, when last tensions on the ground among ordinary Americans have been as high as they are right now. And have a look at this from the 4th of February 2026. Is Savannah Guthrie a Trump supporter? And let's be clear, the tensions taking place in America right now are political tensions, political gyrations, inexorable political heavings. And there have been political tensions even on the investigative side of this case between the sheriff and the FBI. Very overt, very clear political tensions. And even with the president weighing in occasionally on this particular case, there are political aspects to the victims in this family. Savannah herself interviewed the president.
Just this week, you retweeted to your 87 million followers a conspiracy theory that Joe Biden orchestrated to have SEAL Team 6, the Navy SEAL Team 6, killed to cover up the fake death of bin Laden. Now, why would you send a lie like that to your followers? You retweeted
That was a retweet.
That was quite confrontational, and could one argue that as a result of that, President Trump actually lost that particular election? Also, Savannah Guthrie was one of the first to interview one of the most prominent victims in the Epstein files, and guess what happened around that time that the Epstein files really became a big thing again? Well, effectively, Savannah lost her voice, and then when she regained her voice, she kind of lost it again indirectly. We've also seen some incredibly political activities even in the true crime space of late. The assassination of Charlie Kirk, political. The assassination of the Universal Health CEO in Manhattan, political. The responses to these murders have also been highly, highly politicized. The ICE incidents in Minneapolis, Renee Gooden, Alex Preddy, very political and very political responses. I could go on, but the point is, isn't this something that is a lot more political that we're seeing right now than in the last 50 years? And right now, the Guthries are offering $1 million for information on Nancy, and so far, it seems like there's been no response. And look at this comment that's on the White House Facebook page. I don't know if it's true, but that's what somebody said. So I suspect someone had very strong feelings about this, and I suspect today, Saturday, February 28, is probably a good day to talk about grievance. After all, one country has decided to go to war with another country about something they apparently feel very strongly about something they apparently felt very strongly opposed to. So what do you think? On day 28, maybe it is time to start thinking more seriously about the grievance someone might have with somebody else. And grievances, as I say, can be quite subtle and sometimes quite powerful. Sometimes someone can take on someone else's grievance just because they share a same sense of victimhood or ideology or whatever it is. They are not actually the victim in terms of their own grievance, but they take it on because they are in cahoots or in sympathy or supporters of another person. So could this person who kidnapped Nancy be a kind of third party who has a grievance based on their beliefs, but also to some extent based on the grievance of someone else, perhaps towards Savannah? Or is the grievance more direct and more personal? And I must say, I haven't fully shared my thoughts on that. I've formed them. I just haven't shared them with you guys because I don't really feel like you guys are ready for that just yet. My first assessment was that it was more direct and more personal and specific. I'm talking about the motive. And that has been the gift of this sideshow bickering fest between Kelly and Cuomo, is that you realize there are long festering and smoldering grievances between people that are invisible. You didn't even know about them, didn't appreciate them, but you ignore them at your peril. Does that make sense? Thank you for listening, and I'll see you guys next time.